And now, Five Star Properties and Pod Slamma Jamma present Let's Rage Coogs, streaming on the Houston Roundball Review YouTube channel. Of Let's Rage Coogs, joined by Justin Barbosa, Akib Ghazi, and Dayon Dunlap. And as you can see in the corner of the right-hand corner of your screen, presented by Five Star Properties, a Dallas-based company owned by a UH alum. If you're facing a foreclosure or need to sell your house as is for cash, call 972-532-SELL or visit their website at fivestarprops.com. That's FIVESTARPROPS.com. Once again, big props to Five Star Properties for sponsoring this show. And obviously, off the heels of a crazy season opening win, the University of Houston Cougars defeat UTSA 37-35 in triple overtime. What a crazy game it was. I mean, let's go around the table. I see that you guys are muted, so mute yourselves. Whoever wants to take it first, what are your takeaways, your thoughts of that crazy game where really for the first three quarters, there was a lot of anxiousness just in terms of Houston. It took a while for them to get stuff going.
I'll go first. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Yeah, that game was amazing. Honestly, I'm going to say, like, there's times where just because of momentum shifting, like I thought, maybe UTSA had the win in the bag, but Clayton too got that dog in him. He's different. He's different. Like he just makes plays come out of nowhere, and we saw that today. We saw the 2-point conversion he had with the somersault into the end zone was crazy. I was shouting and screaming. And then that stop at the end, of course, was great too. So, I mean, it's an amazing game.
Hey, Justin, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, honestly, I was kind of scared when it was a 4th down and 1 going for it in UTSA's territory. And then once we got that illegal substitution, that really changed the entire momentum to go UH's direction. But, man, that first half was looking really bleak. A lot of trouble on the offensive line, a lot of key drops. I mean, couldn't get the run game going and really not much pass plays, but they were able to put it together after that legal substitution on UTSA, get it together, and it was just a straight-up dogfight going into overtime.
Man, from here on out, I'm calling him Tunchi. He's earned the name Tunchi. Tunchi showed up in the second half. He led us to victory. He did what he was supposed to do, is just made plays. Man, that's why I love college football, man. I was nervous at times, but I never really lost hope because the second half, once the defense turned it on, Toon started making completions and just started moving the ball down the field. But I did get nervous, but I never lost hope, man. Just what a game. That's just the epitome of college football, how good it is, game by game, the excitement, the rules, everything about college football. I loved it. Defense stepped up when they needed to in that last moment. They played great in the fourth quarter, allow us to get back in it. What a game, man. What a football game.
Absolutely. And of course, we have to start with what Justin mentioned a little bit early on. It was I don't know if you would say rust or just a lot of penalties early on, especially from that offensive line, whether it was holding penalties, sacks that they gave up. I think Clayton Tune was sacked 4 times, and they also gave up 9 tackles for losses. That was one of the offensive groups heading into camp where there was some question about it, just in terms of since Dana Holgorsen has been here, the offensive line has kind of struggled a little bit. And I know there was still a battle going at right tackle heading into this game. What did you guys see from the offensive line? And Dayon, I'll toss it over to you first.
I can tell the crowd played a factor. The crowd definitely played a factor with the noise. It seemed like they played a factor. I mean, I just got to give credit to UTSA. They got athletes. Don't let the name fool you. I got to give credit to them. They got athletes on their side. They were able to make plays. Their defensive line made plays. And in our last podcast, one thing that I kept reiterating was who was going to win the line of scrimmage. Went back and forth. UTSA won the line of scrimmage, I thought, in the first half, almost like the first 3 quarters. UH in the second half, D-line, Zach App started to make plays in which that turned the tide. And so I mean, man, it was just a great football game. Honestly, man, I think that's going to be one of the best football games we'll see all season.
Justin, okay, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought. I mean, the O line, all those false starts. Like, I could. I mean, if I'm Daniel Holgorsen, I'm running those guys extra, or making an emphasis on that, because I mean, you have all of off season to. But that's probably because of rust, and credit to that UTSA crowd. Like, they were loud. You could probably. I'm sure if you're in that arena, you could barely hear anything. But at the same time, like those, Dayon just mentioned those that defensive line for UTSA looked big, and I know they only play in or they were in Conference USA last season, but like that defensive line doesn't look like a team. It looks like a team that's part of like a Power Five school. Just how big they were, how athletic they were, how they were making all these plays and jumping our O line. So yeah, they played. Credit to UTSA, they played really well, but all those false starts really they killed us.
And Justin, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, Jeff Traylor's building the team over there at UTSA. They're really good last year, and I was expecting a tough game for it to be like close in the first half, and U of H pull away by at least a touchdown or at least. But yeah, definitely a completely different outcome as UTSA, took over Houston's mistakes in the first half, and then U of H able to pull it together in the second half, and they're building the squad. I expect the UTSA to run the table in Conference USA this year, but once again, yeah, just fix up the offensive line errors going into next week against Texas Tech. That's going to be a big matchup, and definitely something that U of H should put on the calendar. 4 straight losses going back to 2010, and really the last 3 games all could have been winnable against Texas Tech. Really, just a big week coming up. Rest up, work on that offensive line, and correct your errors going into next week.
Now, real quickly, I'm going to toss it over. This is something new that we're trying on. We didn't do this during the March Madness run, but we have a hotline, Section 102. He put his name at Section 102, so I'm guessing that means he was in San Antonio. Section 102, can you hear us?
Yeah, no, that was the section I had when I first got season tickets to TDECU. It's since changed, but that's my name on the Coug fans board. So, yeah, no, I hear you. I just wanted to iterate. It's kind of funny when you read the message boards or whatever, something like that. It's like we feel like we're going to play like gods on week 1, but we had some secondary personnel that was newish. And you were up against 3 very experienced receivers with UTSA, and they made really good plays. And then their quarterback had a lot of experience, and he was an escape artist. There are a lot of times where you think we had him, but he was able to get out of it and make a play. And it just showed that UTSA, they're experienced, they're well coached, they were very disciplined. They didn't make a whole lot of mistakes. And when they did, they were able to kind of recover from them pretty quickly. I look at it this way. They got our C game, and we played UTSA, which was, I'd say they played their B-plus game. They had the 1 turnover, but that was more of a big play by Parrish than anything. But I kind of expected this. I expected us to kind of stub our toe a little bit because we were on the road. We had a new personnel in the secondary. And the other thing was it was the one thing I was a little surprised about is we had some vanilla play calling most of the third quarter, and I didn't quite understand the run, pass. I mean, I understand we try to establish a run. We're trying to get our defense to be fresh, but at that point in time, because of the momentum they had going into halftime and that we couldn't establish a run, is I didn't understand why we didn't mix it up in the third quarter in the early going. But that's all I had.
Thank you for joining real quickly before we let you go. I got to ask you about that the triple overtime play from Clayton Toon. It was the play of the game because it sealed the game where he hurdled over the UTSA defender and then scored that go-ahead 2-point conversion. What were your thoughts when you saw that and just Toon's performance overall?
Oh, yeah, no, you can see, like, I've watched him since day one when he was very green, and Applewhite had him out there too early, burned his red shirt. I can't remember, what was that, 19, I think, or 18? I think it was an 18 when
18.
He burned his red shirt. And you've seen this kid grow, and the best thing that could have happened to him last year was having that bad hammy. So, he was kind of running on 1.5 legs, and he was able to, like turn into a pocket passer, a mature passer. And we kind of saw during the offseason, there was a lot of hype with him during this offseason. It almost scared me to the point where it'd be too much hype. And it was like, are we really just setting the expectations way too high for Clayton Tune? But what you saw with him in the second half was he was a cool customer. He played great. And when when we were up against it and our backs were against the wall, he made the plays he had to make, and they were amazing. And let's not forget, the last play everybody's going to talk about because he looked like Superman going in the end zone. But that pass to Dell was perfect for the 2-point conversion. Before that, I mean, that was a great play by Dell to keep his foot in, but that was right in stride. So, I mean, Clayton Tune lived up to all the billing because there was a lot of hype after he won the Manning Camp Award, all of that stuff. So I'm really excited to see what he can do. I feel like Golden's going to keep maturing. I still don't know who's going to be the third guy on this team. I guess it's going to be Carter for the receiving core. Didn't get to see much out of Brown Jr. today, but I'm really excited about Golden, even though he had that drop. But they played well today.
Once again, thank you for joining us on the show. We appreciate your input and absolutely great points made. Once again, that was a section 102. And before we kind of segue and focus on the defense, a couple of points that he made there, specifically about the receivers. Obviously, of course, with Matt Golden, and really there was a lot of talk from Dana Holgorsen and some of the players during the training camps of how impressive they were with Matthew Golden. They said he didn't look like a freshman. He had a couple of mistakes in terms of drops early on. He had a couple of great plays where he had the toe drag flag moment down the sideline where Clayton Tune found him in the last second. But obviously, of course, when you think receivers outside of Tank Dell, you got to go back to that one-handed catch, the tie-in catch touchdown by Joseph Manjack that he made. That was absurd. That was a crazy catch, and there were a lot of highlights in this game. What were your thoughts from the receiving core, and specifically about Manjack and Golden, not necessarily about Tank?
Yeah, I think our young talent, specifically receivers, really has a bright future. Just starting with Golden. I know he had the one drop, but outside of that, you can really see his explosiveness. On that one stop route, he made the defender miss and took it, I think, like 30 or 40-yard catch. You can see his hands, his concentration. Definitely looks explosive out there. And then Manjack, Holgorsen talked about his ability to play all three receiver positions. You see the big body he has. Kind of looks weird out there because he kind of has no drip, just no gloves, just strictly uniform. But he made plays. When the ball came his way, he made the catches. And I think this receiving core will be well. The game plan, like Section 103 said, kind of what you would think it put it in question because it was so run heavy. But then when it came time to letting Clayton Tune make those throws, he was very accurate with the football, making timely plays. He didn't force any throws and put any throws in harm's way. And the receiving core, when they had time to make plays, they made plays from everyone. From Carter, he made a couple of catches on that 1 3rd down and got the first down. And so all the receivers, I feel like, played their role today.
Okay, but Justin, I'll toss it over to you before we segue to the defense.
Yeah, no, I agree with Dayon. Anytime we needed a catch or a play made, like the receivers, they caught the ball. So especially, not only just catching balls, but they were tight roping, and they were, I think also Matthew Golden, Manjack, he made the touchdown play. I believe that put us just 7 points back. And then, overall, I didn't have of course, a couple of drops, but like the receiving core did their job. And it's not like we threw the ball a ton, right? I think it was like 32 passes, I believe, from Clayton Tune, which is like not normal for him, obviously. So it's not. I feel like we just didn't get to see as much as we could have because we were just so rush heavy this game.
Justin, final thoughts on Tune and the receivers.
Yeah, it's like Dayon said, it's a lot of youth on that receiving core with Golden, then Samuel Brown and Carter. But that was a great catch, like on the sideline by Golden. And Andy was actually saying it in the catch. That was an NFL catch, had both feet like on the sideline with his toes. But what Akib was saying, they made a lot of key catches, and what really stuck out to me was the 3rd down efficiency going 13 of 21 today. Really some big plays on third down.
And real quickly, before we transition over to the defense, we do have to pay some bills. Like, once again, we do have our primary sponsor. And like I mentioned at the top of the show, big props to 5 Star Properties, who, like I said, they're a Dallas-based company owned by UH alum. So if you're in the Dallas area and you are facing foreclosure and need to sell your home for cash as is, be sure to call 972-532-SELL or visit their website as you see it on the screen. That's 5starprops.com. That's FIVESTARPROPS.com. So now, obviously, of course, heading into the season, coming from last season, 2021, really with the defensive identity that was built was Sac Avenue, and just what they were able to build along that defensive line. Obviously, of course, we know of what they lost with the players like Logan Hall and David Anini. Getting into this game, they had a really great first quarter where it looked like they were absolutely shutting down UTSA. They struggled a bit there in the second and third, and then for much of the fourth, it looked like the defense overall had found its groove, and they really did a great job of really going back to the first quarter where they were shutting down UTSA, and then the final 23 seconds happened. We'll go around the corner, Day, and I'll start with you first. What did you see from the UH defense as a whole, and obviously, of course, Sakai?
Well, let's just start with up front. I think they were able to get to Harris a lot, but unable to get to him and bring him down. So they actually affected the game early. And was able to get to him, just unable to bring him down. They were able to stifle the run, play outside of a couple of big runs, and they really played well the entire second half outside of that first drive in the third quarter. Outside of that, they pretty much shut down UTSA until that last drive in which they were able to drive the ball down the field on a couple catches to tie it up to send it to overtime. But, I mean, I got to give credit to Frank Harris, man. He looks like a 6-year senior. Him and Clayton Toole really dueled back and forth, but made play after play. But the defense, the D-line, I think they're going to run their sack total up even more. They didn't get as much of a sacks that I feel like they could have got because of the elusiveness of Frank Harris. But the linebacker court, they flew around. Donovan Newton went out for maybe a series or two, but he was running around making plays. And also the secondary, our corners, they played really well. I will say our corners played well outside of a couple great throws. You can't defend great throws, and Harris made some great throws in which you simply just can't defend. I think our safeties, they played well as well. They came up and made tackles, could have made a couple more plays down the field. But overall, I think our defense, they played a solid game. I wouldn't say it was their best game. I will agree with Section 102. I would say we probably played a C game, a C-plus game at that, and still came out victorious. And that's just holding our team to the highest standard and what I feel like they can produce. And so overall, I think the defense will get better, especially when we're at our full strength. But I will say I'm surprised that we allow players to wear number 10, man. When you wear that number 10 at UH following Ed Oliver, I expect for you to look different out on the field, and that's just my opinion.
Okay, Justin?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with everything Deon said. But yeah, that first quarter, it looked like Sac Avenue, and then that whole second quarter, we were getting torched. A lot of the third quarter, I think it was late in the third quarter where we got like our first sack, I believe, as a team. So definitely that D-line needs a little more work. I think, like Deon said, corners did their job for the most part. I think safeties at times, especially in the fourth quarter in overtime, where they let, those two big plays to let, UTSA back in the game, eventually tie it like that. Those two big plays, they should never be allowed. Like, especially whenever you're in that type of situation in football games, late game situations, the middle is not supposed to be that wide open, and that was two plays in a row. So, I think there might be a little bit, couple of concerns at safety position, but like overall the team, defensively did okay. It's just, UTSA's quarterback was on another level today.
And Justin, I will close out with you.
Yeah, I agree, Akid. That last drive was just unacceptable. It gave me actually flashbacks of that Tulane game a few years back. But yeah, just credit to Frank Harris. He made a lot of the defenders miss. He was crafty. He was slippery, able to make some plays out of the pocket, and especially on that third down play in the second overtime to get that touchdown pass, able to run down to the sideline, make that pass in the end zone. I mean, just all credit to the quarterback there. But That was a great play.
Yeah,
And
that
then,
was fun.
yeah, it's a little bit of improvement on the D line. And what really, what UTSA adjusted to is they went up tempo, kind of spaced out the field a little bit, get some open men on the field. But other than that, it was an okay game from the defense. Expected it to improve down the road.
And I think sticking on the defense, I think the player that really, especially early on, that had a lot of good plays was Alex Hogan, where we saw him making a
Yeah.
great tackle on literally the opening possession of the game. I know he had a couple of other plays where he literally broke down passes. There was a slant, I believe it was on I believe it was in the second half when UTSA went for it on fourth down early on, and it looked like UTSA had converted on the fourth down conversion, and he was able to get his hands in there and disrupt the pass. I think Alex Hogan, what he was able to put on film in this game, really should give Houston fans a lot of excitement and optimism. Obviously, of course, when it's been the talk all of training camp, how are they going to be able to replace Marcus Jones and Demarion Williams? Well, Alex Hogan stepped up, and Art Green had a couple of good plays as well during in the secondary.
Yeah, both corners played well. We definitely miss Pepe and Marcus Jones. You can definitely tell it's a difference having two NFL corners out there. But like I said, both our corners made plays in man-to-man coverage when they have the opportunity to make big plays. They got PBUs. And I mean, it really no complaints. I think first game on the road. I mean, just underestimating. I think use UTSA team. People look at the name and underestimate them. Like, oh, it took you 3 overtimes to beat UTSA, but you got a quarterback like that who has the experience that he has and the way he was able to make plays, throwing, running, just keeping his team in it. I mean, that was a very, very impressive win. Now we go to Texas Tech. It's going to be even better challenge, but I think our confidence is either going to raise even more because Clayton Tune, I mean, just really continue to evolve like he did last year. It was cool under pressure, never rattled, made play after play, whether it's running, throwing, and the team, I believe, is 100% behind Clayton Tune. Tunchi, my bad. Tunchi.
Okay, Justin, any other thoughts?
No, I
Yeah,
think
section 120 really nailed it. That entry to Clayton Tune really helped his presence in the pocket, and we just see it improve in the second half of this game. But just incredible play by Clayton Tune. Really go out there and just sling it.
Okay, were you going to say something?
Yeah, no, I mean nothing else really can be said. How how good Clayton Tune was. He was a game manager, and it was kind of funny. Like I just want to make one point where I think much of the second and third quarter where UTSA was getting going, that kind of looked like Cougar offense to me, where we would have a couple of first, second down throws, and then maybe run it, get a first down, up tempo. Like I didn't see that at all much, and I don't know if I don't know what the game plan was going into this game because I felt like we did not do any of that in the first 2-3 quarters of the game. It just felt like we got scared after Clayton Tune lost the football, but then at the same time the next drive Clayton Tune had like a run for I think first down or he had a sufficient gain. So I'm not sure why he wasn't slinging it as much up until the end of the game when we really needed him to.
I will say, if I can add one more thing, I think, I mean, although we got the dub, I think we could have got Tank even more involved, whether it's bubble screens, quick screens, just to get the ball in his hands in open field, especially with the way we was able to spread them out. And then Brandon Campbell, I really like the way he toted the rock tonight. He ran hard, broke tackles, elusive. I think he's another bright spot in this offense. We definitely miss Alton, but I think Brandon Campbell, just looking forward in the future, I think him and Alton is going to be a nice 1-2 punch.
And on that note, we are going to transition. We're actually going to have footage from Dana Holgorsen, so major props to James Mueller of the Daily Cougar. But before we get to that, once again, just got to give the big shouts to 5 Star Properties. Like I've reiterated during the first few minutes, they're a Dallas-based company from UH alum, and you have their information. Really major props because they were the first company to kind of take the lead in being a primary sponsor. So anything we can do to help them, once again, as you see the number, if you're in the Dallas area and you like to sell your home, they do cash sales. That's 972-532 SELL, or if you want the number version, 7355. That's www.5starprops.com. They have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, and once again, we couldn't be more grateful to them for being the top primary sponsor for the first 4 episodes of Lex Rage Coogs throughout the early portion of the football season. And on the other side of this ad, because we did have another sponsor, and a lot of Houston fans are going to know these guys in Star Pizza, we will hear from Dana Holgorsen on the other side. Don't go anywhere.
Thank you for calling Star Pizza. This is Tim. How may I help you?
This is D.A. Jones. I'm calling to order some pizza.
Hey, Mr. Jones. Same order as last time?
Same order as last time.
Okay, and the delivery address?
Man, we over on Sac Ave.
Sac Avenue? Let me see if we even deliver there.
We right here on your map.
All right, we'll see you in about 45 minutes to an hour.
Hurry up, we hungry.
I'm hungry, man.
We eat the best pizza on Sac Ave.
I'm okay, though.
So once again, major props to Star Pizza as well for being a sponsor on the show. Be sure to check them out with their various locations across the Houston area, and they're doing some great things with the University of Houston Athletics and NIL. Like you just saw, that commercial is an example of that. But we're going to toss it over to Dana Holgorsen, who once again, big props to James Mueller of the Daily Cougar for sending us this footage. He's in San Antonio at the Alamo Dome. Here's Dana Holgorsen opening statements following Houston's 37-35 win against UTSA to start the 2022 season.
Comment first. I know there's some things said throughout the course of the week. I just all in the spirit of competition, so to speak. But I've got a lot of respect for UTSA. Okay, they've been playing for 12 years. Coach Traylor's been here 3 years. That is a very sound, talented, well-coached football team, and this atmosphere is as good as anywhere. Okay, now I commend the Houston faithful. The spirit of Houston was awesome. Our fans were awesome. I knew we'd get a good bit of people here, and we did. I said at some point in the summer, this felt like a preseason bowl game. I think that's kind of the future of week 0 and week 1, honestly. And that's what this felt like. Nothing that happened surprised me. I knew it was going to be a tough game, and I knew we're going to have to fight hard. There was going to be first game mistakes, and we're playing a good opponent. So, man, I just credit our team for just hanging in there, not panicking when we were down, and just fighting till the end and finding a way to get the victory, which at the end of the day, it was Clayton Taylor just making sure it happened. So, questions?
What an opening statement. Obviously, of course, clarifying that leading up to this game, and it was kind of, I wouldn't say it was necessarily, you could feel a bit of that interstate rivalry leading up to it. And then on Thursday, it just ramped up when Dana Holgorsen on his radio show made I do got to preface it. It did sound like he was saying it in jest in terms of the Alamo Dome and how loud it gets. And he said, oh, we got to make sure, if they don't pump crowd noise and whatnot. But ever since that, UTSA really embraced those comments. And like he gave in that quote right there, you heard that it was really loud in the Alamo Dome at stretches, especially when UTSA was rolling and they had that 21-7 lead. And big props to Houston to be able to manage that. And to be honest, that was probably a big factor in a lot of the penalties that you saw from both on the defensive line and a lot with the offensive line. What say you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, I think I referenced that earlier in the show where that crowd noise was something else. And I mean, who would think that you could expect that out of like UTSA? Like, I have friends that go to UTSA. I mean, I don't know if they even some of them watched the game or not, but that crowd was next level. And maybe that's just as a result of how good they were last season. 12 wins is like something to be very proud of. And I think that they're on the come up for sure. Much like how UH was whenever we were part of, Conference USA, almost a similar trajectory.
For sure, they're going to be making the jump. That's something that Dan and I touched on during our podcast leading up to it, where really these are two teams that were in really similar spots. Like you mentioned, Akib, they both were 12-2 a season ago. They're both in a position where they're going to be jumping to a new conference in 2023. And it was mentioned on the CBS Sports broadcast where, I mean, regardless of what the outcome had been, those were two teams, especially once the fourth quarter rolled around, where it was really tough that one of them had to lose just because you could tell that they were giving it their all. Even on that final play where UTSA Frank Harris had a chance to look like to make a play, and it just came down to Houston being able to finally get to him, and it just ended on a perfect note. Obviously, if you're Houston, but on the other side, UTSA is such a heartbreaker. I'll toss it over to you, Dayon, or Justin. Any thoughts on that opening statement from Dana Holgorsen?
Yeah, I mean, I think he had to get credit about that crowd because during the broadcast, they said the sideline reporter was like, if she took out her headset, she can barely hear talking to the person next to her. And so I think that crowd was electrifying. I'm just hoping TDCU can get 30 plus thousand. So 30 plus thousand in the Alamo Dome is amazing. Can TDECU, can the Coug fans answer that? Can they show up and support this football team? That's a question to be answered. I mean, I hope so. This is a good football team. They've proven them. That's a good football team that they beat. And so I think Coach Holgorsen, got to give him credit, man. His team didn't panic. He didn't panic. For a coach who is offensive minded and used to play calling, he didn't. At times, I would wonder, would he jump in and start calling plays? Him keeping his composure, allowing trust his offensive coordinator and trusting the game plan, I think that just boils down all the way throughout to his team. And I'm seeing the comments below, man, that commercial was pretty dope, man. That was pretty dope. And as soon as I saw D'Anthony Jones make that tackle, it made me think about that big hit he made during the game.
Tackle for loss.
Yeah, almost Jadeveon Clowney, like the way he broke quickly, made that big hit. Man, that was a great play.
For sure. And Justin, I'll toss it over to you. Anything from the opening statement, Dana Holgorsen, before we toss it over to, it looks like we have Scott on standby. So Scott, we're coming to you after.
Yeah, just like Dana Holgorsen said, just a lot of respect for that program. Had a great team last year, and Aka was saying earlier, just like kind of like the spot we were in Conference USA back in the Keenum days. We had those big seasons in that 13-1 year in Kevin Sumlin's last year, but UTSA came out ready, and that crowd noise had a lot of effect on the offensive line. And we saw in that last 2-point conversion, they got a false start and had to, Clayton Tune saved the day with that big hurdle. But yeah, definitely a lot of respect to that program and what Dan was talking about. I just hope, if we get a big win over Texas Tech, you're 2-0, got a win over a good UTSA team, getting a win over a Big 12 team as a preview for next year. Hopefully that brings some hype going into the first home game of the season. Like I said, hopefully over 30,000. And I remember, like Joseph Duarte said, Chris Pesman said they had around 20,000, 25,000 season tickets sold this year.
Yeah, for sure. And I can't remember. I just saw an article recently. I don't think the TDSU has had a game where they've had over 30,000 in attendance since I believe it's 2018. But if it's not 2018, it's around that time, 2018 or 2019. So it's been a while. And obviously, a lot's going to depend on what they're able to do in Texas Tech. But this is a really exciting way to start the season. So like I mentioned now, Scott, I hope you can hear us. We're about to toss it over to Scott. Scott, are you there? Hey, Scott. Well, we're going to toss it over to our second guest, Costa. Costa, can you hear us, sir?
Yes. Hey, guys. Go Cougs.
Go Cougs. How were you? What are your thoughts of the game? You just saw the Dana Holgorsen clip there. What were your thoughts?
So it seems like every year since I graduated in 2011, I've been going to games since I was in the late 90s. But ever since we've had Kevin Cobb, it seems like there's always 1 or 2 games a year where they're the cardiac Cougs. It never fails. It's always there's always a game that you're always wanting to have a cardiologist on deck. Our defense really sucked today, unfortunately. Pardon my language, but the middle of the field was always open. Those big tight ends that they had, we could just never catch a break.
For sure. And obviously, of course, when we talk about this game, Oh, go ahead, Dan.
Now, quick question, and I just want to ask him, for a fan who's been going to games for a while, what do you think it's going to take for other fans to fill up TDECU Stadium like UTSA fans did at the Alamo Dome?
Well, so yeah, I remember in 2003, our Browse' first year, we were lucky to have 15 to 18,000 a game, and it's been trending upwards ever since. But a lot of it has to do with the opponents that we face. That's period, end of story. It's just the East Carolinas, the Memphises. It just doesn't do it, and the fans just are not interested in that. And the whole Tony Levine era, the whole deal with the Major Applewhite, just the ups and downs. There just has to be consistency, like Kelvin Sampson has in the basketball scene. It's just, unfortunately, the football team has had its once in a blue moon great seasons. It has to come down to consistency.
I think that's a great point, because I think Chris Gardner, who were on his YouTube channel, he mentioned that Coug fans often come out to see the other team. And the last game that I went to that the stadium was completely sold out was when Louisville came to town and Lamar Jackson was there. So I think you're right spot on right there.
For sure. And Costa, one of the final things we'll ask before we let you go, obviously, of course, next game, Lubbock against Texas Tech. It's something that a lot of the players that were on the team last season, they're still on the roster this year. Obviously, of course, you can't forget of how that season opener went in 2021, where Houston had that 21-7 lead, and then they were completely shut out in the second half, and Texas Tech came in, obviously, of course, in Houston, not at TDCU, at NRG Stadium, and were able to go away with the victory. How big is it going to be for Houston? Obviously, coming off the exciting performance in week 1, to be able to build on that, and how big will it be going in attendance if they can go up there and beat Texas Tech? I know they're playing Kansas for the home opener, but if they can come back 2-0, that's got to do wonders for the program in terms of momentum.
Well, don't forget, even before last year's game, we're losing. We even lost to Texas Tech a couple years before that at Tech. So they've had the number on us for the last 3 or 4 years. This is our time to finally show the country that we belong in the Big 12. We have to put up and shut up. We have to, we have to walk the walk. And Dana has to have his meaningful game. He really hasn't had his meaningful game yet. Beating Cincinnati would have been great last year. Beating Auburn's nice, but you want to beat Tech, you want to beat Kansas back to back. That way you're starting off next year. Hey, you can play with the big boys.
Yeah, and I think Tech is a must win. They're like the doormat of the Big 12. Like, we cannot have that as a big game. We got to beat them, and I expect to beat them on the road, especially going into the Big 12. They're not a team that just year in, year out, a good football team in the Big 12. If we want to prove that we take that next step, I agree 100%. We got to beat Texas Tech. That's a must win, in my opinion.
Yeah, Costa, you had a really great statement to close out, so I'll toss it over to you. Is there anything else you'd like to add, whether it was of this UTSA game or looking ahead at the season?
No, I just want to tell you guys I like your podcast. I have it. I listen to it on the road, and I'm really proud of you guys for doing what you're doing. So I'm just big props. Go Cougs.
Thank you, man. We appreciate it. And we're about to go to the next clip. This will be Dana Holgorsen speaking about Clayton Tune. But once again, and we got to keep hammering it on because this is the inaugural after, what was it? We had the final show in March. So it's about a 6-month hiatus since the last time we did a Let's Rage Coogs, when obviously, of course, it was under unfortunate circumstances when Houston had just lost to Villanova in the Elite Eight. But we didn't have a sponsor back then, and 5 Star Properties, they were really, really big for us to being able to kind of take that leap of faith for the first show. And this is kind of a plug, but they are the primary sponsor. We have spots for secondary and tertiary sponsorships, or like Stark Pizza did, where we saw that, where they could buy commercial spots. We're open for business, like Brett Yormark, we mentioned the Big 12 said over a month ago when referencing possible conference expansion with the Big 12, where we are also open for business. And once again, we just like to give a huge shout out to 5 Star Properties, the Dallas-based company that is actually owned by UH alums. So sticking with the program network and being able to build, it's always good whenever you see the UH alumni community come together to, obviously, of course, in this instance, when it comes to athletics and this specifically football, but just in general to help out Coogs helping Coogs. And obviously, of course, if you're in the Dallas market looking to sell your house as is, be sure to contact 5-Star Properties first, like you see it on the screen at 972-532-SELL or at www.5starprops.com. So
and I gotta mention my frat brother, greatest fraternity in the land, Kappa Alpha Psi, Jay McLean. He is the sponsor of 5-Star Property. So make sure you tap in with him.
For sure. And on that note, we will toss it over to Dana Holgorsen and what he had to say on his quarterback, Clayton Tune, during the game against UTSA.
He was a little uneasy in the pocket because I don't think we protected very good for the first 3 quarters. And why, I don't know. I can't wait to watch this video. I mean, there's just going to be so much that we can learn from and coach off of. He did way too much with his feet that I'm comfortable with. We called a few designed runs. Some of them was being in the score zone area as much as we were due to 3 overtimes. But, that we don't want to do that with him that much. But at the end of the day, this kid's going to do what he's got to do to win the game. I mean, that's where he's at. That's his mindset. We got to keep him cleaner. And, I'm looking forward to being able to coach that up.
So once again, Dana Holgorsen kind of mimicking or mirroring some of the stuff that we touched on early on the show. And obviously the big thing right there, something that was kind of the story of 2021 when Clayton Tune suffered that hamstring injury early on in the season that really limited his mobility. And there was a lot of talk of how that ended up being kind of a blessing in disguise for Tune, just in terms of not having to rely a lot on his legs. Well, during this game, and a lot of it had to do, like Dana Holgorsen touched on it there, just the offensive line. A lot of times there were instances where the UTSA D-line was just being able to get into the backfield and forcing Tune to rush, which forced Tune to have to make a lot of plays with his legs. And I know that's something that we kind of said in jest where I think it's very rare the time that Clayton Tune's going to throw away the ball, just because I feel like he believes that he can make a play out of thin air and he has that much confidence in himself. But there was a couple of times where, he would try to extend the play and he would take big shots, and just to give a chance to his receivers early on. I'll go once again around the round table, and I'll go to you first. But kind of what Dana Holgorsen said there, where he's really looking forward to being able to see the tape and seeing where they can grow, especially on that offensive line where they had to rely on Clayton Tune to make a lot of big plays for Houston to be able to pull out this win.
Yeah, that comment, that brings me a lot of confidence, because him saying that there's a lot to be, taken care of, a lot we need to do to get better. I mean, that tells you how much more we can improve, even though we got a win today. It was a tough win, but at the same time, there's so many things the Cougs can improve on. And if you're a Coug fan and you saw today, our performance wasn't as good until, late game situation, you should be even more confident, because there's so many things that we can, clean up and get better at throughout the season. This is only game 1.
Down, Justin, any thoughts on what Dana Holgorsen had to say?
Yeah, I'm glad he mentioned about the offensive line, and they're going to work on adjustments going into the next week's game. But yeah, he's right. Got to protect your quarterback, and he said it himself. Scared to see Clayton Tune make some plays on his feet, and obviously did well with it, and saw it on the last play of the game that clinched the win. But definitely, work on offensive line. Give Clayton Tune some time to throw and go out there and make some plays in the pocket. But that's where the injury last year with the hamstring really helped him. His presence in the pocket. But now that that's all 100% healed, he adds another development to his game. Could be more dangerous on his feet as well, and make him more versatile.
Yeah, I think one thing that stood out to me in that clip was Clayton was a little antsy in the pocket. I don't know if it was – I think it probably was because of the pressure, but I saw, in my opinion, a couple of times where he may have rolled out too soon, where he could have stepped up and still made a couple throws. But like Justin just said, I mean, it brings another element to his game, his ability to extend plays, his ability to run with the football, and then his accuracy. I think his accuracy really took a next step last season, forcing him to stay in the pocket, become more of a pocket passer. He's really taken next level because he's made a lot of accurate throws. And that one throw that got tipped, if it wasn't tipped, Matthew Golden would have caught that, it would have been a touchdown. So he made a lot of accurate throws. He had a really tremendous game in that second half, didn't lose the game. And that was oftentimes in the last couple of years, UH would have found a way to lose that game, whether it's the defensive or offensive, they would have found a way. But when you have that good leadership at the quarterback, I think it just bodes well at the end of the team. He kept them in, the defense kept fighting, and ended up making the play.
And speaking of sponsors, if anyone out there would like to sponsor the hotline, right now would be the time where it would be your time to shine, because, well, we've had guests throughout, but joining us from San Antonio, James Mueller of the Daily Cougar. Once again, thank you for providing that post-game footage of Dana Holgorsen. You are live in San Antonio. You were there. I guess we got to start with what was the atmosphere like in the Alamo Dome from the beginning when UTSA was leading, and then when Houston rallied and throughout overtime. I'd imagine through the TV it was pretty hectic, but what was it experiencing it live?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. You were good to go.
So thanks for having me. I can only stay on for a few minutes, but UTSA, yeah, their students showed up early, right when the gates came in, packed it out, doing UH through warm-ups, everything like that, sort of as you would expect. And then obviously the first quarter, it was just so-so because, there wasn't much happening in terms of big plays. But then, that second quarter and then third quarter when USA went up 14, it was going nuts. And you could just sense that they brought that home field advantage. Dana, I don't know if you talked about it already, but in one of the clips I sent you, talked about, this atmosphere is as good as anywhere he's been. And it was electric, especially overtime, each play. I mean, the crowd's just, on the edge of their seats, holding their breath because, each play matters so much. And then when you get down to that third overtime and the 2-point conversion, it's one shot. And so you could just feel the anxiety throughout the entire stadium.
For sure. And speaking of post game, we just finished talking about Dana Holgorsen and what he had to say about Clayton Tune, and we're really, he said he's looking forward to being able to watch the film and being able to break down and kind of dissect a lot of stuff, especially along that O line where they had a really rough game against UTSA. But what were some of your main takeaways from Dana Holgorsen's availability, and did they have any players post game to discuss as well?
Yeah. So my main thing from Dana's availability was, he was just straight up honest. It was a win. It was an ugly win, but 2 years ago, a year ago, same thing wouldn't happen. And that goes back to, the veteran age of this team. He's talked about, time and time again, how old the starting unit is and how they didn't have fear, even down, in a hostile environment. So that was my biggest takeaway from Dana. And then Clayton, Tank, and Nelson Caesar were available post game. Clayton just, he emphasized the same thing that Dana said about just, not feeling that sense of fear from the team when they're down. And he's talked about, him wanting to step up as leader more and more. And this was a great opportunity for him to show it. And Dana obviously didn't want him sacrificing his body as much as he did, but he was like, when there's a will, there's a way. You got to do what you got to do to win. And he wasn't going to let anything happen. He was going to do everything in his power to bring that win. And if that meant, taking some big hits like he did, especially on that flip to the end zone, he was going to do it. And then Tank, he just, you see that confidence in him every time you talk to him. You could see that again. One thing he talked about was his eye black, it read murder business. And he was like, that's just my message. I'm out here to murder whoever's up against me. I'm here to kill. I seek blood. And so he that was a big takeaway from him. And then he also talked about on that 2-point conversion in the second overtime where he made that toe tap and grab. Originally, it was supposed to be another QB draw, he said. But him and Tune locked eyes before, and he said, Tune was like basically telling him through his eyes, I'm coming to you. And then I don't know if y'all talked about Dana said that Manjack ran the wrong route on that play. But that's just Tank being Tank. And, he knew, like, he was going to make that play no matter what. So that was the big thing from him. And then Nelson, Nelson's, not a huge talker, but the big thing from him was just, how complimentary he was of Derek Parrish, who had surgery. Dana confirmed 2 days ago. Parrish injured his hand on like a punching bag thing, getting on a warm-up drill, and had surgery on Thursday. And he's out there playing with the cast, and he's the one that sets up, the big interception for Caesar and just his resiliency. So those were the big things from the players overall.
Gotcha, James. I know you're kind of crunching for time, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they're trying to kick you out of the Alamo Dome before we head out. But just obviously looking ahead at Texas Tech, is there anything that there should be a focus or something? We heard Dana Holgorsen in that clip say he's looking forward to dissecting it, but when we think of Texas Tech, we think of offense first. What's something, whether it be from the defense or maybe from the offense that we saw from U of H, that they're going to have to clean up when they go up to Lubbock next week?
Well, for one, they're going to be motivated because of what happened last year. But I think there's a few big things to watch. Obviously, the offensive line, how that works. They were rotating in Ruben and Lance at right tackle. So can they get a solid starter there? Because, early in Dana's career, they had so many different combinations of O-line, and that really hurt them. Last year, every game was the same starters. They need that same consistency. So can they find that? Can they shore things up? And then Tayson Henry's health, obviously, Dana said he had an ankle injury of some sorts. He was only out there a couple drives. And so, yes, Brandon Campbell and Stacey Sneed provide, decent depth, but Dana's like, they're young. They're going to make their mistakes. Tayson's different when he's out there. So how does he stay healthy? And then obviously on the defensive side, in the first half, you saw Sac Ave get to Harris a bunch, but they couldn't finish the play. In the second half, they finished the play, 3 or 4 sacks. I don't know what they finished with. And Nelson Caesar talked about just, how some of those first game jitters, clearing those up. So I'm looking to see, are we seeing these same missed tackles from the Gates, or if they clean that up where, they're coming out, and if they have the opportunity to sack Tyler Shuck, I think that's who's starting for QB at Texas Tech. Are they going to make it instead of, let what happened tonight in the first half where Harris was able to, extend plays with his legs, avoid all these things, and ultimately lead to UTSA's points?
For sure. And like you mentioned, the Houston defense finished with 3 sacks, 6 tackle for losses. And obviously, of course, like you mentioned, if the starting QB is Tyler Shook for Texas Tech next week, it's going to be something where, they've seen some footage of him, obviously, of course, like you mentioned, going back to the season opener last season. So like you mentioned, it's going to be a big game, especially when we talk about what Houston and all the players that they're returning from last year's team, how motivated they are. I'm sure that's going to be something on their bucket list. So James, once again, thank you for being able to hop on and join us, and also, of course, for providing the footage. We appreciate you, man. Drive home safe.
Thank you,
Thanks
James.
for having me. Have a good one. See y'all.
For sure. And so once again, that was James Muter of the Daily Cougar. We have a couple of more Dana Holgorsen clips before we wrap things up. But obviously, of course, before we go to those Holgorsen clips, have to give props to 5 Star Properties, the primary sponsor for the first 4 episodes, actually, of our Let's Rage Coogs postgame show. So they're going to take us through the month of September in terms of primary sponsorships for Let's Rage Coogs, keeping us doing this post-game show. We've received a lot of feedback, and we liked it. It looks like it's been a success based off the comments. So once again, they are a Dallas-based company owned by UH alum, like Dayon Dunlap said. If you're facing foreclosure or you need to sell your house as is for cash and you're in the Dallas area, be sure to contact 5 Star Properties at 972-532-SELL. Or if you're interested to learn more, be sure to visit them at their website at www.5starprops.com. They have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, and huge props for them for being the primary sponsorship. I'll test it over once again to the final clips of Dana Holgorsen before we wrap things up.
Could you feel that, that sort of resiliency on the sideline? Did you still, feel that, belief in him?
At the beginning of the fourth quarter, yes. I believe we got to stop, and then we drove it all the way down there. We had it on the 5, and so, we called everybody out. It was 21-7, but I felt like we had started gaining momentum. And so, we brought them up like we always do in the fourth quarter and just challenged them. This game's not over. And they had that look in their eye like, this game ain't over. I've brought them up, with down less than that, and they had a look in their eye. Like BYU comes to mind. When I brought them up in the fourth quarter, I think we were up. We were, but they didn't have that look. They didn't have the right look in their eye, and we didn't finish. Now that was 2 years ago, and this program's in a different place now. But they had that look in their eye, which was what I wanted to see. And sure enough, we played good in the fourth quarter, got it to overtime, and then finished the game.
Snead got stopped on fourth down on that drive, and you guys get another shot at it with the illegal stuff.
So that clip got cut out there, but I think that's interesting where we talk about progression from a program standpoint, and when they were referencing that BYU game, that was a couple of seasons ago now, going back to 2020, where he talked about how really that's kind of the growth from this program and how now they've kind of adjusted, and we've touched upon it. Actually, one of the big storylines throughout training camp where a lot of the veteran leaders on this team were talking about how they have one goal in mind, and that's being able to accomplish what they weren't able to do in 2021, and that's finish and then win the American Athletic Conference Championship. And I think it's interesting you hear from Dana Holgorsen's perspective, and it kind of shows that maturity of the team from where it was 2 seasons ago to where they are now.
Yeah, it's something like I mentioned a second ago. I mean, years past, they would have found a way to lose that game, and now it's a different team. The look in their eyes is different. Their belief is different. Makes me think of the quote that Nelson Caesar gave last week before the game, that this team is really, really motivated, not only because they believe that they can win, but not only that, they have the talent to win. They know what it takes to win, and I think they really have a leader at the helm, at quarterback and coach, whether it's Dana Holgorsen, the defensive coordinator, Doug Belk, and the entire coaching staff as well. I think this team has definitely taken a turn, but you got to finish next week. Next week is a big game for me.
For sure. Akib, Justin, any thoughts before we go on that final Dana Holgorsen clip?
Yeah, no, I mean, Dayon said it best. Like, next week, it's a huge game, and there's still a couple. I mean, we got a W today, but you can't get anything wrong. Like, there's still some question marks, some answers that need to be, answered. Some questions that need to be answered. So, I'm curious to see how well we do against Texas Tech, who do have our number over the last couple of years.
Justin?
Yeah, like I said earlier, we have a 4-game losing streak going all the way to 2010. Of course, the last few years, those games were winnable against those Tech teams, and those were not good Tech teams at all. And we should be able to go into Lubbock and be prepared and hopefully get the win next week and get that Texas Tech hump off our shoulder.
For sure. And this will be our final clip of the evening, I guess. Yeah, the evening, almost 8 o'clock. It's already, that fall season, so it's pretty dark outside. Dana Holgorsen, once again, post-game, talking the 37-35 overtime thriller in San Antonio.
You hit it down
That's exactly right, JD. I flat out told him, I was like, we just got a break there. We need to capitalize on that. I mean, this is one of the first breaks that we've got in this game, and we need to capitalize on it, and we did. And so that was big.
Dana, you've talked about just, the weapons y'all brought in at receiver, and obviously Tank did his thing, but can you just speak on that man jack catch and how big that was?
That's big. Him, Golden, Sam Brown, Kojak, CJ Nelson, those guys played kind of like I thought they would. They had some big drops. They had some busted assignments. Matt Burns, same thing. A couple of busts, couple of, MAs and some drops as well. First game stuff, it was going to happen, so I think we'll be able to, obviously just clean some things up and, use this for learning experiences. But, Matt made a couple of pretty outstanding plays. I mean, they're all capable of making plays. Manjack made a play. Seen the other guys do it. The more they play, the more consistent they get.
So a couple things there, and obviously, of course, I think that's something we haven't really touched on, and it's that break that we heard Dana Holgorsen discuss at the very top of the clip. UTSA had stopped Houston on 4th down, and I can't remember if that was late third or early fourth quarter, but I know Houston was down 14, and they got the stop. I believe it was Stacy Snead who they had stopped at behind just short of the first down marker, but a flag was called, and UTSA allowed Houston to convert a first down because they had too many men on the field. And lo and behold, Houston capitalizes on that. They go down, they drive, and they cut the deficit to 7. And then on the rally, they end up scoring 17 unanswered off of, after that mistake by UTSA. That's something we haven't touched on. That's pretty huge. And honestly, it might have turned it did turn the whole game around because UTSA takes over. They're going to be already in Houston territory if that that stop stands.
Yeah, I think that was a game-defining play, but I think the play that really, really turned the momentum, in my opinion, in which we haven't talked about, that was Derek Parrish. That sack fumble. Well, I don't know if he gets credit a sack there, or deflection on the pass in which Nelson Caesar made that interception. That play, in my opinion, really solidified the momentum in Houston's direction, and they really never looked back after that. But that flag, that was something that Houston, like Dana said, they definitely haven't gotten in the past. And Clayton was able to drive down and capitalize on it, and that was a huge play as well.
Okay, Justin, any thoughts?
Yeah, that was for me. I was gonna mention that same play, like the pass defense. That was to me the play of the game, and then second was like obviously the interception, and then third was the touchdown catch that resulted from that. But it's just when it comes down to it, whenever you need to make big plays, the best teams are the ones that convert on some of these plays. So that's how UH got the dub today, and like that's what it's gonna take probably throughout the season because they're some of these games are not going to be a cakewalk.
For sure, Justin. I'll let you get in your final thoughts.
Yeah, Dale and I could just nailed that right there with the Derek Parrish play with a big hit on Harris, and then ball just went straight up in the air, and Caesar able to get it and take it all the way down to the 20-yard line. Then just a few plays later, the touchdown pass to tie the game, of course, on the crazy man-jack reception. But yeah, all started with that the legal substitution and then the turnover on the other end. But other than that, just a great effort from there on out to get the win.
For sure, and really, it's going to be interesting to note, like we've mentioned throughout training camp. Dana Holgorsen said that he felt like, at least when it comes from a receiving core standpoint, this is probably the most deepest they've been. I believe the direct quote, or I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but something along those lines, where he felt that at each receiver position, he feels pretty confident that they are too deep. And I think, obviously there were a lot of mistakes with drops from a couple of receivers, and it'll be interesting, like James said, was that more of the case of the season opener jitters? It's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be big to see at Texas Tech, is that cleaned up, and do you see a lot less of those mistakes? Because if you do, then I think you showed it in flashes where it was Matt Golden doing the toe drag catch. Obviously, of course, Manjack with one of the plays of the games, 1A and 1B there with Clayton Tune's dive for the 2-point conversion. Obviously, of course, we know what Tank Dells was going to bring to the table, and he was solid. I mean, to be honest, you could say he had a down game for Tank standards, but he had 2 touchdowns, so he was really impressive. And I think overall it just goes to show the potential that this Houston team has, and it'll be an exciting 2022 season. Before I'll let everyone go around the table and where people can find them on Twitter, for one final time, we'll give props to our sponsor. Obviously, of course, thank you to everyone that took time to comment or that joined the show to be able to discuss and give their input. It's a post-game UH show, so we appreciate you guys' comments, especially Juan Miranda, who it looks like you donate to the show as well. So you're a sponsor. You're a sponsor. We'll get you up here one last time. And obviously, of course, shout out to James Mueller of the Daily Cougar, who you heard him speak about 10 minutes ago, but obviously, of course, also provided the post-game coverage. He was in San Antonio covering it for the University of Houston student newspaper, the Daily Cougar. And once again, major props to 5 Star Properties. They were our primary sponsor for the show. They will be for the next 3 episodes of the football season. And they are a Dallas-based company, like I said, also owned by UH alum. And if you are looking to sell your home for cash, be sure to check them out at 5starproperties.com. That's www.5starprops.com. Or be sure to call them at 972-532-SELL. So, Akib, I'll toss it over to you first. Where can people find you, and any thoughts, whether it's of this game or looking ahead to UTSA?
No, I'm just excited about playing Tech, and And I think someone did mention in the comments that we have a winning record against Texas Tech, but definitely not in the last couple of years. But so I'm excited to hopefully get a W, and not just a W, but like a commanding victory, because is now a top 25 team currently, and some pundits had them, I think, have UH being playing in a New Year's Six bowl. So they gotta play a lot better to achieve that. And and he said, yeah, you could find me at Akib Ghazi MMA on Twitter and Instagram.
Yeah, for sure. Whenever the UFC comes to town, he does great, outstanding coverage. Be sure to follow him on Instagram for a lot of that coverage when they come around the state of Texas. Justin, I'll toss it over to you next. Or where can people find you, and any closing thoughts?
So guys, y'all can find me at J Barbosa PXP, and yeah, just look forward to next week. Get that Texas Tech hump off the shoulder, finally get a win over them, and go 2-0, and just hope, get some more attendance, at least they honestly, hopefully at least 35,000 for the home opener. But just make sure you take care of business against Tech next week, and all should be good from there.
And Dayon, I'll toss it over to you. Where can people find you, and any closing thoughts?
You can find me, like the screen shows below, at Twitter, at Instagram, at Dayon Dunlap. I think this week, one game, being in this tough crowd, facing this really good UTSA team, is only going to help prepare Houston for another even tougher crowd in Lubbock against Texas Tech. And so I'm expecting to be more poised, less penalties, and put together a better performance. And I think maybe they let Tank loose a little bit, probably not so much letting it go in that first week, probably holding back a little bit. But I think this game definitely is going to help prepare them, and they're going to take a lot of learning experience from this win and take it into next week, and hopefully they get that dub.
And that's going to do it for the inaugural Let's Rage Coogs of the 2022 season. This is going to be something that not only will be doing post-game for every football game of the season, but obviously, of course, once the men's basketball season rolls around November 7th, the home opener, the season opener for UH men's basketball team, an exciting time. Obviously, of course, the final season is in the American Athletic Conference for the University of Houston before they jump into the Big 12 in 2023. We thank you for each and every single person that checked us out, that commented, that joined the show, and obviously, of course, our sponsors, and or even our Juan Miranda, who also donated during the show. We couldn't do this without you guys, so we're greatly appreciative, and we'll do it again next week, post game, when Houston takes on Texas Tech in Lubbock. Once again, thank all three of you guys for being able to hop on, and go Cougs.